Check 1, 2. We are in session. We have a quorum. As you know, this is a work session, so our rules are rather lax, but I think at the start of this session, we begin with a prayer and a pledge of allegiance. If you all would please stand.
Let's pray. Father, we thank you for this day and, Lord, this time to come together and to discuss the work of this great county that we all call home. So, Father, I pray you'll bless our conversations. Lord, as we look out in this room, many of our county employees are here, and they represent so many dedicated employees who have brought us through these last 14, 16 months of unprecedented times. And so Lord, personally, I thank them for their dedication and pray that you will continue to bless them. And now, Lord, would you bless our conversations as we look to see how we can best serve the citizens of this great county. We love you. Pray this in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, liberty and justice for all.
A little bit about protocol. Hey, Sheriff, thanks for coming. A little bit about protocol. Some of us are wearing masks, some of us are not. And the reason is you can do what you want in a free country like this, and I'm wearing it even though I had the vaccine, and I'm wearing it out of respect for those who might not have had it. And that's the reason I'm doing it. There may be 10% here today that are wearing a mask. I may take it off a little later on. But with that, the Camden ordinance has lapsed, as you know, and our emergency ordinance has lapsed. And hopefully our numbers will continue to come down, though we've had an unfortunate number of deaths in the last week and a half. And more about that during council meeting tonight. With that, I want to turn it over to Vic Carpenter for this work session, and then the next scheduled work session is next week, same time and place. Go ahead, Vic.
Good morning, members of council. What we're doing today is we're going to be going over the general fund. If time permits, at the end of it, we'll do capital. If not, we'll do capital next week along with EMS, sewer, fire, and whatever other questions that may be remaining. Tonight we'll be talking about the sewer options as on the agenda for Mr. Jones. And so if you have any questions through the process this morning, feel free to ask. We can always add more sessions as well. One thing about a budget like this, especially, this has been a very complicated year, as you understand. This budget will probably still see some tweaks between now and third reading. So it's not unusual or abnormal for us to make changes, especially as council starts having input. And if council sees things they wish to change, then we change them. Yeah. So that's the way the process goes. We start from the starting point. The administrator, by law, prepares a budget. And that is what I'm presenting to you today. And we will take it from there. You will notice as we go through a couple things. This budget addresses every single one of the high priority items the council set in the goals. It addresses several of the medium priorities as well. So it accomplishes many things the council wanted to see done, most in fact, of what they wanted to see done. It is got a lot of moving parts because we have a lot of pieces this year that we needed to move and touch and address. And so I'm going to jump right into it and tell you what the key components are of this budget. The first thing is it's a balanced budget. As always, I present to you a budget that is balanced. Remind you that it is a reassessment year. So what that means is that as the assessor's office for the last several years has gone through and determined the market value of properties, those properties are put on the books. They're limited in the taxable value to a maximum of 15% growth over the previous 5 years. So the market value and the taxable value will start separating as the taxable value is normally less than the market value. That'll require us to send out reassessment notices probably this summer in advance of the tax notices. So as reassessment occurs, it generally changes the value of a mill to some degree, determining based on how much the value of that mill goes up. There may be some reduction in the millage so that it has a net of equal. We're not allowed to coup a windfall from reassessment. So the law requires that we would reassess, then that we look at the millage and we reset the millage as necessary for our starting point. This budget will address challenges that have been identified in fire and EMS. This budget will pay off and refinance debt. and it'll use freed millage to address funding and capital needs elsewhere in our budget. This budget does take advantage of the ARPA funds. Those are the American Recovery Protection Act that Congress passed in January. So it does take advantage of those funds to address some areas of concern. It does reflect the reorganization of county leadership and structure. It addresses growth and the impact of growth on county services. It also reflects the growing cost of just doing business. And there are some modest adjustments to select parks and rec and zoning, planning and zoning, and detention center fees. What's the highlights? We always start with the revenue. How much do you have to spend before you start spending the money? Several highlights I point out. This is not all of them, but these are just things that I picked out from the general budget. One is that our property taxes are flat. We don't show a significant growth in property taxes, and that's in great part because of reassessment. So we're not looking to really see a big growth in the revenue we receive from property taxes this year. But there is a growth in vehicle taxes. During the COVID, a lot of people apparently traded their cars in and bought new cars. So there is a significant, now the dollar amount I show is the total amount, not the growth. So that's the total amount of the fee they'll be coming in. Our local option sales tax, people went crazy shopping when they got stimulus checks. And that's had a significant impact on our local option sales tax. So it goes up significantly. Great news is the local government fund for the first time in 14 years has increased. The General Assembly fully funded the necessary by formula local government fund for the county. So it shows an increase this year compared last time it grew was in 2007 before the recession. We use a small amount of the ARPA funds, $355,000. As I told you at the very beginning that I will be very cautious in my recommendations until we know for sure how we can spend the funds. Plus we have till the end of 2024 to spend them. So you won't see me willy-nilly trying to spend all that money that'll be coming in. But I do have some modest use of it in this budget. Planning and zoning, the fees grow. That's because of growth. The impact of growth is a lot more permits coming through that office. One of the things is people bought new cars. They didn't buy additional cars. So our road maintenance fee is flat. It's the same as it's been. It doesn't grow. But Register of Deeds income has significant growth as well. People are buying and selling so much more. Courts are flat. We show very little growth in revenue from our total court revenues. And we do show our SRO reimbursement from the school district. And then one last item is just our interest income is a very significant decrease from previous years because there's virtually no interest to be gained from money in the bank. So what are our highlights on expenses? Well, this budget reflects mandated pension increases, mandated insurance increase. It does reflect a 2% employee pay raise. It reflects increase to our contribution agencies that we support. It adds 4 new positions, 1 in IT, 1 in finance, 1 in the treasurer's office, and 1 in the Register of Deeds. These are all areas that have been impacted by growth on the county, and in pretty much every case have not had any growth in employees for over a decade. It supports the sheriff in seeking a grant for 4 new deputies. It reflects the initial implementation of our structural reorganization in management and departments. And it fully replenishes our emergency fund and restricted reserves. After we used the money last year to support our local businesses, we're back to fully funded again in that line item. So where does it cost? These are our main categories where it grew whether we did anything or not. Health insurance went up $122,000. Our retirement costs went up $200,000. Property and liability insurance, $100,000. Fuel, $130,000. And contracted maintenance, $100,000. As you're aware, contracted maintenance has become more and more an item that gets you. As you no longer buy stuff, you lease it, and then you have to pay annual fees and subscription. And the result of that is every year they go up significantly greater than the cost of living goes up. And then what departments are going to show the most growth? I put the ones that show the most growth just to give you a sense. Obviously, not every department will grow. Some departments shrank because that's what their needs were. I won't read them all off to you, but I just wanted you to have an idea just to get a sense of the growth. You will see that most of the growth that we have comes in our public safety sector. I do show growth in the solicitor's office because that, I do fund the position the solicitor requested from us for the technician for the evidence on the cloud. So that is funded in there. So,
Just briefly on, in the public safety department, that's personnel cost growth or what?
A bulk of that is personnel costs, certainly in the sheriff's office. That's where probably 200,000 of that growth occurs. The rest of that is just incidental costs of doing business, again, either things like contract and maintenance or whatever across the board. So that's where the bulk of that goes. In detention center, two main line items, health services and food. Both contracts were renewed at significantly greater than we were paying in the past. So that's where the growth in the detention centers come from. It's not really personnel, but in what we pay people to come in and provide us contracted services at the detention center.
If I may,
Yes, sir.
one concern that I have, what's the largest department we have in Kershaw County?
The sheriff's office.
Okay, point in case, we bring EMS, we bring fire, we bring other departments up here individually, but yet the sheriff was kind of lumped in, given 10 minutes with his budget process. And I think we probably need to look and have a independent study with the sheriff's department as we have with EMS and fire.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, he also did address back in January, as you recall, too, to the council, too. So,
And I do remember that when we were meeting at the other building.
yes, sir.
I understand that, but it's just my concern, and of course, maybe it's because, I have second-generation law enforcement in my family, but what I do know is that we've got a sheriff who has gone 3 years and totally lived within the means of his budget, has not come before this county council asking us to ask taxpayers for any additional revenue, but eventually that runs out. And I want to commend you, because you have worked very closely with him to make that happen as well. But that's just something I'd like my colleagues to take note of, and if we have time, and if it's deemed necessary, if you'll just meet with the sheriff, and let's just see if we don't need to do a separate
Absolutely.
date with him as well.
Absolutely. Yes, sir.
And I know nobody up here intends for that to happen that way, but I noticed that. That's just me bringing that to everybody's attention.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Also, if I may, Public Works. We're borderline in trouble in Public Works. Anybody who tries to, there's no trying to get a hold of Danny. We get a hold of Danny or get a hold of you, because we're receiving complaints and concerns out there in the community about their living conditions with their roads, not having, whether we don't have the manpower, whether we're not paying them enough to get the manpower, or what it is. Bottom line is, we just need to really, I think, look at Public Works and see what do we need to do to make that a little bit more easier on you and on Danny as well, because that's become a full-time job, I think, for Danny Templer, as we have, if you go back the last 6 months to a year and just look at it.
Yes, sir.
All right, thank you.
Then moving into the budget itself. Starting with the revenues again, I won't go over every single line item in the revenues themselves, but we're looking to bring in a total of $28,695,942. As I said, it is a balanced budget. As you look through, you'll see under the, Danny brings that up.
Mr. Carpenter.
Yes, sir.
I don't follow along quite as well as maybe my colleagues who are a whole lot smarter than me, but can you give us the page numbers when we get to them?
I will. Yes, sir.
Thank you.
And so we start with general fund on page number 18. The bulk of our revenue comes into what we call non-departmental. Non-departmental is generally going to be our taxes, our shared income from the state of South Carolina, and any transfer from reserves or other areas that we show. As I've indicated, our current property taxes and our delinquent taxes pretty much stay flat from last year to this year. Fee and lieu goes up. little bit. Vehicle taxes and local option went up a good bit. As you go down, the area that I was really pleased with, again, the local government fund, goes up almost $200,000. The transfer from reserves, you notice, of 1.2 million, those are the funds that we transfer into the general fund for capital. So later on in the budget, you'll see where we transfer it out of the general fund and put it into the capital fund. So it's an in and out, it offsets. So it shows they're going into the general fund, but then we'll pull it back out later and use it to buy capital items. That goes back to the policy the council set on how we manage our fund balances. And at the end of the year, after we have replenished our restricted reserves of 3 months operating capital, and then replenished 1 month of emergency reserves, any money left over, staff is to recommend to council how to spend that money, with the first priority being capital items. So we ended up last year with about $1.2 million that we're going to be recommending and showing you later how we'll spend it on capital. Then transfer from propriety, proprietary, that last item is from the sewer fund as it continues to pay back all the years of loans that were made over to that fund. Further, as you move down, most departments have some modest amounts of revenue that comes in. My department gets credit for selling Cokes in the employee canteen. So I bring in $150, we estimate this year. And you can go through,
Mr. Carper,
yes, sir.
can we go back to
Sure.
the transfer from proprietary, which is the sewer?
Thank
Is that
you.
the same?
I was very interested in that as well. Thank you,
Okay.
Sammy.
Is that the same amount that we had last year? Because
Yes.
I remember we shift some monies around to do some other things out of the sewer, so I'm just,
It is, and,
Okay.
and the auditors agree that that's a reasonable amount to do on an annual basis to offset the cost of operation for the county as well. We run into trouble if we try to transfer too much money from sewer into the general fund, so the auditors would have to flag that. So they've come up with that as an amount that's a reasonable amount each year that we can transfer in without coming up with any auditory issues when they do the audit.
So that's to repay something?
It goes back from the years when the county had subsidized the sewer system, but also reflects the fact that some aspect of my salary of finance departments is also affecting sewer. So it's a subsidy that goes to offset those costs that are shared by the county to operate that department.
So you're transferring back the maximum legal amount?
Yes, sir.
Back into the general fund. So is the sewer generating a profit at the end of every year?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Can we further dive into how much that is and what we can do with those funds at some point?
I don't have it today. I'll be glad to, though. Yes, sir.
Okay, thank
Absolutely.
you.
Also, let me ask you a quick question on that. How much are we, the exact amount, how much are we spending from the taxes we receive sewer?
I don't have sewer today. I was going to do that next week, but
Well, we're going to be doing it tonight as well.
Okay, well, yes, sir, then I'll have information then for that.
But you know, when you talk about it, I know for a fact that we are spending tax money we get from another plant that is operating in Kershaw County. That helps run the sewer fund as well too. Correct, taking care of the old lines and things like that.
That money is being used to pay for the southern loop.
Gotcha.
So it's not really running the department. It's dedicated to pay for the southern loop, so we didn't have to issue.
And how many
debt.
customers do we have?
About 1,700 customers, roughly.
And the average amount of payment is about,
It's dependent on usage. So, some people, obviously, industry pays a lot more than.
which we rate that usage on the amount of water they use.
Correct.
So if they water their yard, their sewage is going to be higher.
Unless we will work with them in some cases. We'll give them, for example, they do a pool, we'll give them an offset. We encourage that they get a separate meter if they're going to be spending a lot of water on things like that. Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, sir. So as you move on to page 19, again, the planning and zoning, you see that building permits are generating a good bit of revenue for the county at this point. Public Works, that's been flat for a while now. They bring in about $2 million a year every year, or they spend roughly about that amount as well to operate. Delinquent tax collector flat as well. Other line items are, again, by and large flat. Our court system, family court at the bottom of page 19 is relatively flat. Summary court, same thing. They might show an increase of 5,000 or 10,000 in some cases. Register of Deeds, however, on page 20, they show, again, a significant increase from last year, up to $760,000, coming from dock stamps and recording fees. That's where the master of equity is flat. That's basically for bankruptcies. There just haven't been that many, so it's been pretty flat as well. The Sheriff's Department is not a revenue generator per se. They do get reimbursed for some SROs from the school district. The bulk of the detention center comes from our per diem. Per diem, we charge any entity that houses their inmates in our jail. So Camden, the Highway Patrol, Town of Elgin, DNR, anyone who arrests someone and puts them in our jail because they're arrested in Kershaw County, pays a fee. Yes, sir.
On the per diem for the detention center, when's the last time it's gone up?
It's been a while, and you'll see that we're going to recommend raising those per diems this year. So
Has there been a study done on our cost factor, how much it's costing us to house someone from the city? And of course, I realize we don't handle juveniles.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. There's a write-up in your packet, and we'll explain that when we get to
Just
it.
here,
Yes, sir.
okay.
It's in there.
I think if you go off food alone, you know it's increased.
It's, yeah, and medical.
But what I'm saying, Mr. Tucker, is that certainly, hopefully there's been a study done and not just a comparison to other agencies.
Well, I don't know to what degree is study. We do compare to other agencies, obviously to see what they're charging as well. But we also look at the increase of costs. As I said, medical and food have gone up significantly in the operation of it, which is one reason why we're looking to raise those fees.
Correct, and I don't disagree with looking at other agencies, but I would think that, because I had to do it when I was there, a cost analysis on what it was costing us to house, and I see our wonderful director over there. I'm sure he understands what I'm talking about.
Yes, sir.
Okay, but I would like to see some kind of looking into how much is it costing us just based on what we have at our detention center, not necessarily, and it's not a wrong thing, we have to compare to other counties, I agree with that, but I think if we don't do our own cost analysis, we're just kind of shooting from the hip. Well, this person charges this, so we're going to charge this. My opinion. Thank you.
And under Director Cato probably already has that in hand.
I feel sure he
Knowing him.
does.
Finishing up general fund, moving on to the next page, page 21. The bulk of the library's revenue comes from the state of South Carolina, from library aid that they receive. Recreation, we will be again making some recommended increases to some of the fees that we charge for rentals. The aquatic center will show some growth with the splash pad opening up, as well as athletics. So when we get into fee increases, that'll be there for the council. And DSS, that's the, they used to support us a whole lot more than they decided that they weren't. So, they provide a small amount towards the money we're required to pay to house them and to help them operate in Kershaw County. And so the bottom line, again, $28,695,942. So those are the revenue sources for our general fund. So we'll stop there if there are any questions on where the money comes in from in the general fund.
I'll frame the first question by saying this seems to be a very conservative estimation on revenue income. Is that correct?
We try to be, yes, sir. I mean,
And
obviously,
so-
we're predicting flat growth in property taxes, things like that, so,
Yeah,
because we do.
and we'll know later once the assessments are done.
Yes, sir.
So that's a key point everybody should grab. And then so those notices go out when?
This summer, reassessment notices will go out this summer.
Yeah, and I think the last time we did it was 5 years ago, and we need to make sure we tell the public so they can come in if they disagree with an increase. That'll be very important.
Absolutely. The appeal process is a very important part of this overall process, and people should understand that appealing is it's harmless. Staff has no vested interest in any particular value, so if you appeal it, staff will review it, and they'll change it. If not, if you don't agree with it, then there's a review process that brings private citizens to hear it, and they make the decision. So it's not a staff-driven issue, and staff has no heartburn over appeals. So I encourage everyone, if you got questions,
Yeah.
appeal it.
If you got the letter sitting on your kitchen table and you don't open it until November and December when the taxes are due, then it adds to the aggravation of our population that need to know about this.
You do have 90 days to appeal.
Yeah, so I think we have a public information campaign that follows.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
2 questions for you, Vic.
Yes, sir.
You mentioned the ARPA funds.
Yes, sir.
I think it'd be useful if we could get whatever the most recent guidance is or memos that you've received on the categories that we can spend those on as we think about them. And I just wrote down it was $350,000 or so that you're already proposing that we spend on something.
In operations, yes, sir.
In operation, what areas would those be?
Those would be going to pay for some one-time expenses that the county's going to be incurring, like equipment, some of the expenses related to what we're doing, either like for the council, we're going to be looking to upgrade our system here so we can operate better without some of the issues we have. So a variety of one-time expenses that I can justify using ARPA funds, which are not recurring, or that's in this. Now, later on, when we get into special funds, I'm also going to be recommending some larger ARPA funds that would go into some of the other categories that the council can consider and approve being spent on. So I'm only looking to put $355 into the operating budget of the county, but other more significant expenditures in some other areas of the county operations.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, sir. Okay. Then moving into the expenditures themselves. We start with non-departmental. Non-departmental is where we put items that either are across the entire realm of the county or they don't fit into a particular department. Dues and publications, those are going to be like our fee to be a member of the COG in Sumter or the COG in Columbia, as well as any publications, magazines, subscriptions that we get. Also, the Association of Counties membership would come out of that. Large items are retiree insurance. The county does pay towards all of our retirees who have at least 10 years with the county towards their insurance costs. You see what we're paying for property and liability. Again, it went up over $100,000. That's what we have to pay for to have insurance. When something goes wrong and someone sues us for a variety of things, either for physical or for items, capital items. And then again, you see the transfer to the capital fund. So that's where the money goes back out that came in under the revenue side.
So which one went up 100,000, the 800?
Property and liability, P&L.
Why did that happen?
A variety of things, but generally it's based on claims. So as we have claims that are filed against the county, and then they reserve a certain amount of money. So the amount of money they reserve for a claim will result in the premiums going up based on what our loss experience is.
Yeah,
So,
yeah, that's always regrettable. Thank you.
yes, sir.
Can we shop that? Has it been shopped?
We have done it. This is, the difficulty with that is we are a unique kind of an entity with law enforcement and ambulances, and getting insurance for them is not a lot of people will provide it to us. So we are essentially self-insured through the Association of Counties because Aetna and those companies won't do it. There's just too much exposure for them. So the Association of Counties has its own self-insurance fund, and the counties pay into it. Then they cover us, and then they determine how much we will pay them. So we have looked in the past, and they will cover some parts of it, but we can't find anybody that'll give us the full coverage that we get with this policy.
Where were the areas of greatest risk, I guess? I see Barry get the award every year
Well,
for,
Barry has saved us a lot of money.
Yeah.
And working with our departments on it. Risk comes everywhere from pulling a trailer that doesn't have lights on and someone hits it. Our sheriff's office, obviously, we had an accident in a solid waste truck some months back. It's just across the board. It could be a variety of things. Someone trips at a convenience center and gets hurt going upstairs or down the stairs. Someone backs into them. We're just liable across the board about anything we do. And so, generally speaking, your public safety categories are your most expensive: EMS, the sheriff, and then public works. Those are your top three for where you're going to have injuries occurring.
I get that. I guess I was trying to make sure we're not having a unusual increase in a particular area that we can address. This is just,
Yeah. A lot of that information, they don't, is kind of kept somewhat, I guess, confidential because it's involved in lawsuits and things like that. So, I certainly can provide you information if you'd like on some of those areas.
okay, thank you.
Yes, sir.
What is the amount of, are we $10 million liability policy?
Very.
How big is it? Because at some point, if you're dropping $900,000 a year, you could almost self-insure.
Not if.
Barry, could you speak in the mic, please?
Sorry.
Not going to let you get out of it that easy.
I'm sorry, I wish I had a chance to prepare, so if I ramble, just be patient with me. Over the past few years, there has been a series of natural disasters. I know that several of y'all deal with this kind of stuff. So we've had some hurricanes, some 100-year floods, that kind of stuff, and there has been an across-the-board increase in the rates that are being charged, not specific. All right, so say you have $100 that you're charged and you have a rate of 2%, you're paying $20. Well, the 2% part is what's changing. It is changing nationwide, and I'm sure you've probably noticed it in your homeowner's insurance as well because of all these natural disasters. When the insurance people are hit with problems, they pass it on to other people. Our percentage of claims in property and loss has been some of the best in the state. And I can't take credit for that. We've been lucky. Think about all the times that the flood hit us, but it didn't hit us as hard as it did Richland County. We had other storms that have hit us, but again, hit other places much more. And even though we've been fortunate, the fact that the association's reserves had to take the hit and the reinsurers had to take the hit has caused the cost of the insurance to increase. And plus two, some of this is also involved with the fact that during this time that I've been here, just using that because that's my experience time, we have picked up emergency services has grown tremendously. Sheriff's Department's grown somewhat. We picked up fire. Those are expensive things. It's like if you have a $100,000 house and you add $50,000, the insurance goes up. So it's been we insure a lot more things than we have in the past. I rambled all over the place. I apologize. Does that kind of address the question?
No, it makes sense. It just doesn't seem like we have any options. And that's a chunk of change. That's a big part of the budget.
It
Just
is.
that one line item is huge.
Like I said, we've in the past gone looking for other sources. And again, they'll come back, but they don't want to insure law enforcement, for example. And that obviously isn't something we can go with if they're not going to insure law enforcement. And the association isn't going to pick and choose and say, well, we'll do this if you go to them for that. So it's kind of an all or nothing deal. So
Can I add one more thing on that? Part of the problem, and I apologize, part of the problem with, and I'm not opposed to it, but having some experience, I don't know if you know, but before I was here, I worked for the state as an adjuster and as a claim supervisor for workers' comp. And the problem with switching is that when you change, they project what your losses are going to be, and you pay a premium up front. Well, at the end of the year, they recertify, and then you pay the difference. I'm sure you're familiar with that. And the problem is that there are a lot of companies, you have to be very careful and selective in who you pick, because there's a lot of companies who will deliberately underestimate the amount of claims that you're going to have in an attempt to be low, and then they'll hit you with a cost, and now you're back on the market again looking for it again. So that's a problem just to keep in, if we ever decide to do that, let's keep that in mind.
Okay, well, thank you so much.
That was a good discussion.
Barry, one thing we do know, you're doing a great job, as the Association of Counties lets us know every year too with you, and I appreciate it.
Will you do me a favor?
What?
Whatever you do, keep that in mind.
Nice. Somebody finally got it.
I think, no, he did not get me. Let me tell you something. I am the county councilman who said employees come first this year before we think about anything else. Employees come first. I am the first one to say that. For them to sit up there and act like I wasn't is not funny, but I'll laugh at it anyway. Thank you.
Oh, good.
Moving on, page 23, county council budget. The council budget, it shows two items of growth. One is we put travel and training back into the budget. So that would, once again, as the conferences are reopened, council members take opportunities in either Columbia or wherever they may be held, Hilton Head or Myrtle Beach or wherever. Also, the cost of redoing the vision plan is in there as well, under professional services. So those are the two line items, three counting elective training, that have increased. Everything else is flat for the council.
Is that the smallest budget we got?
For the county? No, sir. Moving on to our contribution agencies. These are the organizations that the council and the county have supported through the years for a variety of reasons, but in most cases, they parallel what the county is trying to do, and they support us. These are, in each case, what they have requested, they have received this year. We're in a position where we could do that. So the big increases were the United Way went up from 15 to 30. The Alpha Center went up from 35 to 10. Food for the Soul went up from 15 to 25. Mount Moriah went up from 5 to 95. And the others as well went up some as well. So these are, any questions on them? Administration. This is my budget. It shows an increase, and the increase in it is in three areas. Under the salaries, one of the positions that I am adding is putting in the position of a full-time public information officer who will be under my staff, who will also work with us on programs and activities that the county is doing. We're doing so many more events anymore, so that reflects that position being added. It'll still do other things for the county, not just for my office, but we also have a increase in employee recognition. That's the Christmas, at Christmas time when we give gift cards, as well as our employee dinners that we do in summer and in the holidays. And then under the Casey Solutions, that's the part of the overall Enhance You program. Casey Solutions is our employee work groups that are assigned problems and pulling the employees together to start working on some of the issues that we as the county, through our employees, have to deal with across the county. So it's part of that as well.
Vic?
Yes.
But this public information employee, would they, you talk about events, so would a lot of the advertisement and even graphic design become a little bit more uniform under that person?
Advertising, graphic design, our website. We don't have a webmaster currently. It's kind of divided up among 4 people. They would be primarily focused on that as well. They would focus on our social media accounts, generating content as well to put out, to explain to people the programs that we're doing, policies, et cetera, whatever. So if a department
was having an event, they would go through this person for their graphic design for their social media campaign?
Right.
I think that's great.
Next, page 26, finance.
Can I say something?
Yes, sir.
Going back, and I hope we'll put as much emphasis on Public Works getting some additional help out there as we will our social media accounts.
I think that's the plan. I understand.
I haven't been told that. You must have a connection I don't have.
Yeah.
Or you know a lot
Hang
more.
with me, man. You won't go wrong. I'm telling you, Jimmy. I've been trying to tell you that.
Yeah,
I
I
got you.
noticed that. You're the man to watch and to follow. Thank you.
In finance, again, the biggest issue and biggest change for them is we're looking to have 2 more retirements in the next 6 months. That department, we must replace those people with new people, so we bring on a person to start working with our payroll, as our payroll clerk will be leaving, and that is a very complex, as you can imagine, with over 400 full and part-time employees, the county, and the variety of issues that have to be dealt with in taxes and paychecks. So bringing someone on to start learning that role and that position when Denise does retire as well. That's their biggest increase in their budget. HR, it's a flat budget, very little changes. Page 28, the attorney's budget, again, flat from last year to this year. That's always anticipated. We don't really know what we're going to spend in legal fees. Could be a whole lot less, could be a whole lot more. So we just work on a 3-year average and trying to figure out what those costs would be. Then on the same page, IT. Again, IT shows the addition of another person in their staff, the stress and pressure that's been placed on them in the last couple of years as we continue to become an organization that is more and more online, it's more virtual, it's more technology driven. So this would add another technician to them as well, someone who could also work with them in some of the areas such as cabling. Just running the cables becomes a significant part of the day, just getting everything hooked up and connected to itself. Of course, costs for data processing and equipment leases go up as well for them. You know, we own very little anymore when it comes to technology. We have to lease everything, and that's reflected in their budget right there.
Hey, quick
Yes, sir.
question. In our next handout like this, will it be, when we tweak things, will it be the same, or can we go back to the old format, Ms. Sandra, where there's a comparison? Because
Sure.
this is great for today, but when I sit down at the house, you know, I don't have you with me or Ms. Sandra, so I need to kind
I
of,
was anticipating giving you a last year, this year, and then next year's comparison.
yes,
I just wanted to make sure that your questions on individual line items were good for this morning.
yes, sir,
Then we'll give you the comparisons you can compare to see.
yes, sir. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Put
Building,
in,
yes,
put
sir.
in a date time group on that because it'll change.
Yes, sir.
Please do. Thank you. Just-
Building maintenance, again, as you see, they're relatively flat every year. COVID is still an expense we'll have to maintain, so we have a line item now, or that's mostly cleaning supplies, as well as we have to add any kind of equipment or hardware that may be related to it for COVID. Everything else for them is fairly flat. Planning and zoning, page 31. The only real growth of their budget comes under the contracted services as we have more and more pressure placed upon us for development. Rather than hiring a person, looking to contract inspection services with a third party to go out and start doing the inspection. That way, if we slow down, then we can just let them loose and not have to worry with an employee. Everything else for them is pretty much flat from last year to this year.
Well, they're not spending as much as they're bringing in.
No, sir. They're generating excess revenue.
So, kudos, Michael.
Next, page 32, emergency preparedness. Again, it's a flat budget, no real changes from last year to this year. Public Works. Again, the bulk of their costs are going to be, besides salaries, going to be fuel, fleet maintenance on vehicles as well, supplies and what have you. As we're looking at retirements over there, we'll be looking to do some restructuring over there. Later on, we'll get into equipment and capital for that operation as well. So this is going to be a year where we are kind of working with them in their leadership over in Public Works and in solid waste to part of our overall reorganization of the county to better utilize the resources and the people that we have.
You brought up something just now in reference to the fuel, and I know we're going through a little crisis now, and I just don't know what the aftermath effect is going to be on this long term, because, you know, they know how to get the prices real high, real fast, but they don't come down quite as quick. So we've made those proper adjustments, I take it, as well, on our fuel, because this is just happening now within the last 10 to with 14 days with this fuel thing?
When we do fuel, we anticipate a price that's higher per gallon than we pay as a rule. So, was it $3? Yeah.
Okay.
So that's the price point we use. Of course, we don't pay full price when we get it as well.
Right.
Certainly diesel off-road, we're not paying taxes on any of that. So we generally budget for a price that's much higher than, reasonably can anticipate. And if for some reason that's not enough, then we just have to transfer the money in.
Thank you.
Yes, sir. Page 34, the assessor. Again, their budget would show a decrease from last year because they're not engaged in reassessments, so they don't have some of the costs like for postage. That would be a big part of the current budget as well. For them, data processing is still a significant expense. But they're a decreased budget from last year. 35, the auditor's a flat budget.
He said he didn't need any money this year. Oh, he's back there?
Just a printer.
Delinquent taxes, again, as you recall, we split them out of the treasurer's office. Jill mentioned that the other day. So they're now a standalone department of the county versus a subset of the treasurer's office. So they're a flat budget from what we moved over out of the treasurer's office into there. With the treasurer's office, it does show adding a new person. By losing the staff from the delinquent office, they lost the ability to maintain complete coverage when people are on breaks or on vacations or sick. So we put a person in there. They haven't had a growth of employees in over a decade. So that budget does reflect a growth of one employee. GIS and mapping, again, this is an area that's fairly flat. We will be spending a good bit of money in capital on them later on, but their operations is a flat budget. Our clerk of court, page 39, again, it's a very flat budget, very similar to last year's. Family court, page 40, again, not reflecting a lot of growth in expenses over there. You will notice in most cases, though, we have added back travel and training, because most of our departments will be taking advantage, again, of training that is either required or is provided for them. Summary court, again, it's a flat budget. As is our probate court.
Mr. Carpenter,
Yes, sir.
I do realize that we're talking about summary court and probate court, things like that, but we have general sessions as well, and I know we'll get to it, but, with the COVID, courts were shut down. Now they're going to be kicking back up. How much of an increase in cost is that going to be for them to try to catch up due to the pandemic?
Well, we funded fully juror pay. They didn't spend a lot on jurors last year, obviously, so we fully funded with jurors again as well. In discussing this with the various departments that are involved in the courts, that was something that they have included in their request, their ability to meet that, and nobody has indicated that they don't feel that they're capable of meeting whatever extra duties they're going to have to do this year.
And you've talked to all the departments involved?
Yes, sir. Yes, we've gone over each budget with each department and discussed them one-on-one.
Just for the benefit of council, what I see from the civil side, there's at least a 14 to 16-month backlog on civil jury trials. Some of the general sessions and criminal stuff has been processed a little bit faster, and the courts have done as much as they could through Zoom for hearings and that kind of thing, but there's a significant backlog. I don't know that it'll impact costs directly, but since we are talking about the courts, pre-COVID, we were discussing moving some courts, having different facilities in different locations, improving security, improving technology. Are those plans still on hold, or do we have anything in the works for picking that back up?
We've been working on that through the time, as Clerk Hasty mentioned the other day. We've upgraded the technology in the courtrooms, so they now have full cameras, full TV, full monitors in there that they did not have before. So we've upgraded the level of technology significantly in the courtrooms. Moving the voter registration, once we finish that project, and the only holdup now is the the parking lot, someone from Columbia came and determined that the parking lot was not ADA compliant, so we have to make it ADA compliant before we can move into there. As soon as we get that parking lot ADA compliant, then voter registration moves in there, then all the records will move over to the old voter registration building, and that'll be turned into a records facility for them. And that'll free up space currently in the vault and places that are in the courthouse, so they can then move some courtrooms down there. So they're shifting internal spaces like that. So we are still continuing on trying to ensure that technology and space is upgraded and their needs are met. So we've been doing that through COVID.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, sir.
Quick question. So basically, all the parties involved, that would be probate, magistrates, circuit court, family court, sheriff's department, they're all on board, feeling like they're ready to rock and roll whenever things start getting back up to normal.
My understanding, yes, sir. No one
Okay.
has shared otherwise.
They're getting everything they need to be ready for that.
As far as I'm aware, yes, sir.
Okay.
And they know if they ever need anything, they just come to me. You know, and if we didn't have it in the budget, we'll find a way to make it happen. No one's ever been turned down when something comes up after the fact. So,
Because when courts don't move, it puts a burden on our jail director.
and he knows it. Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Again, probate court, moving on, register of deeds. This does reflect the addition of a person in their staff. As you know, they've only got 3 people there. And Billy is 43 years. We know she will at some point, hopefully not soon. But she's requested another person to be in there to start helping them get her up to speed with everything, with all the increase of work that they have. So we put a person in there to better support her so she doesn't want to leave anytime soon.
Right.
We also finished in her office the digitization of all of the deeds back in 1791. So those have all been digitized, and now we're moving on from there over into court records that are being digitized. So one of the goals the county set was continue digitizing all of our records so they'd be available online. So we continue that process.
Well, you keep sweetening that pot. We need to hang on to her.
Our master in equity, again, it's a flat. Revenues pretty much equal expenses there. It's a wash, but we have to have master in equity handles, again, court order bankruptcies, things like that for properties. So if it goes into foreclosures. Central Communications, again, 911, this is essentially flat. A lot of their expenses also come out of their, the tariff, the $1 per landline that is charged to citizens of the county, as well as the ability to get reimbursed from the state of South Carolina. So they have two budgets. One is Central Communications, and then as a special budget we'll do next week, which is all their tariff money and things like that. The coroner. In the coroner's requests, he's increased autopsies, unfortunately, because more people keep dying in our county, as well as cost of transport for them. The Sheriff's Department, 47. Again, this shows the cost to operate the department. We will be submitting for a COPS grant for the 4 deputies that he's requested. So that would be under grant. The county will make a match, a 25% match to that one if the grant is received. So we're working with the sheriff to get him his extra person per shift through that process.
Vehicles as well.
Yes, sir, that'll be under capital, but yes, sir.
What's the increase in full-time shown on this thing? It looks higher than last year.
It's about, the actual cost of the full-time has gone up. Sandra, do you have that with you? Yes. So went up $174,000,
Okay.
which includes, again, the pay raise, the safety and security officer that's working with the school district, as well as internal promotions or pay raises.
Is this the time to talk about our pay rise for employees?
Sure.
Just refresh us on the total approach there.
Right. What I've built into this budget is a 2% across the board pay raise for all employees. We did not do one last year, as you recall. And it's just a flat, though I have, in the past, we have sometimes done a 3%, 2%, 1%. Several, of our employees over a certain pay range had not received a pay raise, and so I felt it was appropriate for everyone to receive at least 2% this year.
Yeah.
So that's baked into what I'm presenting to council.
Okay.
So that's every department, right?
Yes, sir.
Would it be prudent to look at some of the lower paid employees?
Change the range.
It would be, sir.
2% on $11 an hour isn't a whole lot of money.
No, it's not. It would be, ultimately, I believe what we need to do is do a wage and comp study just to see what we should be paying our people as well. We've tried to, the last number of years, at the base of our employee pyramid, give higher pay raises at the bottom than at the top. And that's something which we've done for most of our last pay raises until this one. I think absolutely that'd be something that's worth doing and looking at. And if council desires, we can do that. I do not have that budgeted per se, because one of the issues is when you go through that process, I can tell you now, especially at our lowest levels, we're going to show up as needing to pay more. And then that puts the reality of what would probably be a pretty significant need to find revenue to raise all those salaries up to what that study is going to tell us we need to do. So I believe it's probably worth more discussion with council to see to what degree council is committed to actually doing something like that. Doing a study and then not implementing it is probably worse than not doing a study at all.
Yeah, how much does the study cost?
They'll go through every single position we have, rate it, compare it to the market, and then come back. So it's generally in the six figures from what I've seen other counties do.
Can we just do it in-house and then let the employees get that money we were going to waste?
Well, the last time we did one, which was in 2011, we did it in-house. So we could do another one like
I'd
that.
like to talk about doing it in-house. I don't
Okay.
think we need to spend the money with some agency to do something that we surely can do.
Okay.
Russell, could I I'm sorry, go ahead.
You, go ahead.
I was going to piggyback on what Russell said. I agree with you on that. 2% is great, that's fine across the board, but what you're doing, and we all know this, and the department heads and the employees know this, everybody, regardless of how hard you work, is going to get the same amount of raise. I like the 3-2-1 because it really hit those who are more or less at the tail end of it. And I do agree, I think we could do an in-house study and not have to go pay six figures and get a good idea as to what we need to do. But this is where I'm coming from, and I've been told that this man does it in his own business. He takes care of what he's got first before he starts expanding out. And I think that's somewhere, some kind of, well, let me just say this. I think we've dropped the ball on that, and I think instead of continuously to expand, we need to stop and let's take care of each and every single employee out here now that has fallen behind. Because and I know, we all know that you can hire somebody in that you're going to hire them in at about the same price you're paying somebody else if you're not careful. And I know I witnessed that when I was a department head with the county and an employee with the county. And I know that the rest of our folks out here have probably been confronted with that as well. So that's something that I think would need to be top on our list, is to follow the comments of Councilman Brazel, that we do an in-house study, we look at what we need to do, and that we stop expanding and growing staff, and let's take care of the staff we've got now first. My opinion. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Carpenter, this is more directly towards my colleagues than it is you. I don't care how you derive that, whether you do it in-house or out-of-house. You have to determine that according to what you're looking for, because y'all will probably be limited to what you can do in-house versus an outside study. But I would say to my colleagues, the council members up here, I've gone through one of these before with the state. Matter of fact, I was on the other end of doing the study and presenting the solution to the problem. Most of the time, it's not a one-year fix. It's multiple years, but it's a commitment to do it. You can't stop in the middle of it. You can't stop just doing 1 year. The one that I did for the Highway Patrol, it took us 4 years to implement it fully. And we started from the bottom and worked up to the top. But it worked, and it brought where those salaries for the state troopers were one of the highest in the southeastern region. It can be done, but we can't waver on the commitment when the study comes back on what we're going to do and how we're going to do it.
How many employees are we talking about?
Full-time is close to 400.
How many different brackets?
Oh my gosh, I don't know. It's a book this thick though of
Yeah.
various positions we have.
I'm happy to sit down and help with it.
Okay. I
To
mean,
keep
yeah,
from
absolutely.
spending money.
Just if you took the 200 bottom lowest paid employees and raised them $1 an hour, that's going to be $400,000 a year. And then that moves you from $11 an hour to $12 an hour, or $10 an hour to $11 an hour. And that's just where you get into it is just the sheer numbers of people. You find yourself, like Mr. Tucker was saying, we could have put some money towards that and had no new positions, but we would have been raising people 40 cents an hour maybe across the board when you start getting into hundreds of positions like that. Versus if we do it as a dedicated project, then there should be a commitment that we will see this through. And so if we're going to do it $1 an hour for the next 4 years to get someone up to whatever the council feels is an appropriate starting wage, then you're going to have to do that math and say, okay, so we're talking over a period of X number of years was probably going to be, $1 million+ a year growth in what we're having to spend. So that's the reality of this many employees trying to do it. And so it's not an insignificant commitment that the council would have to make if we did that.
If I may,
Yes, sir.
I've been through those as well. I've been through the in-house. I've been through the contracting out as a department head, as an employee throughout my 30-something years. But the thing about it is we talk about commitment. We can commit to spend millions of dollars on other things.
I think council knows my thought. I mean, I certainly have
Well,
very strong.
then, sir, if that is your thought, then put it in the budget and bring it up. Let it be part of the process. Because as it stands now, I hear everybody's excited about that, but it's not a part of this process right now. And I commend this man right here, Councilman Brazel, for saying he would even participate and to work with everybody to get it done, to save taxpayers money, to not have to go out of house to get a study done for 6 figures. So many studies have been done and they sit on shelves and never go anywhere. But I think this would be a worthwhile endeavor. Thank you.
Okay, well, let me just make some points on housekeeping. It's one of our number one priorities. It's the highest priority we had when we went through our retreat, and we all voted on it. So I congratulate all of you for your interest in the pay rise. I will say that we as a council didn't give specific guidance to Vic, and I thought the number 2% was what we talked about. But at any rate, in order to do this right, Vic, it takes more than just the remaining 2 months that we have to get this budget passed, in my judgment. It takes a while, as Mr. Tucker said. So let me just ask you all to comment, is it your sense that we should try to do that quick study in-house in the next 2 months before the end of the fiscal year, or are we looking for an effort beyond this fiscal year? Let's hear from you guys. Tell me what you think.
Mr. Chairman,
Sure.
Vic, could we do an in-house and have a meaningful study by this budget year? And be truthful, because there's a lot on your plate. I'm not, I don't want something just thrown together, hodgepodge, and we miss the mark.
Well, you would obviously have to have it done and in your hands before third reading. And third reading is going to be in 4 weeks. So I don't see, if you want a study where you're looking at a clerk's position and saying, what is a fair salary for a clerk, as opposed to saying, let's just give everybody a $3 an hour pay raise. You can do something like that fairly simply. It's just math. If you just want to raise everybody up, 20%, 10%, $2 an hour, what have you, then it's just doing math. But if you want to determine how much should we pay a clerk, how much should we pay a clerk two, how much should we pay a CDL driver, then that's going to require more commitment and time than we would be able to do certainly in a month. And honestly, I don't know, because when we did it before, it was again 10 years ago, and it was a different environment at that point as far as who was doing what in the county and the people that we had available.
I don't think
We
we're
can
running
do it.
solid waste then either, were we?
No, so, we've added so many more classifications, again, then you get into the issues with EMS and what have you, and what their pay is and should be. So, I get back to it, if council's looking to raise our lowest paid, which is something which I'm fully supportive of, and if you go to me and say, I want you to come back with a plan that's gonna raise everybody by, some defined amount, then we could do that in a month and tell you what that would cost us. But otherwise, I don't see how we could do a study of each position and tell you what they ought to be paid.
Well, Mr. Chairman, that answers my question. I'm for doing more than the 2%. I'll make that publicly known right now.
Is that for everybody, Sammy, or just a lower percentage? Or?
I need it structural. I have to do my due diligence. I do want something a little bit more for the lower paid, but I do want something higher than 2%. And I want a commitment out of council that if we're going to do the study, that we'll be willing to, if need be, we can reopen the budget as a council to implement anything that, once we do the study, to move forward with it, to take care of our employees. So that's where I'm at, since you asked. And that way, it won't leave us short from doing right by the employees, but at the same time, it's not the fix-all to everything if we do the study and then start implementing that.
Yeah. Russell, you opened it, you responded to my suggestion on the pay rise. What do you what do you think?
If you'll give me that book, I'll have it back to you next week with my thoughts. That book that you thought, the
Okay.
big, thick book, I'll go through it myself at night.
Okay.
I'll have it back to you.
I'd be glad to.
I don't need it's just me, maybe because I've been doing it all my life. I don't need somebody else's opinion of what. I can look at it and give you my opinion.
Yeah. Jimmy?
If I may, and Mr. Tucker, to your saying you would like to have a commitment, I can't commit to anything that I haven't seen, but I'm committed to the employees, and I'm committed to do a salary study, but I'm not going to sit up here blindly and say, yes, I'll be committed to whatever they bring back. I haven't seen it yet, and I would hope that most of it up here would want to see something before you committed to it. But what you just said, I think, was just asking a little bit too much from me, but I am committed to this, and I would like to see a salary study done. I think we're way behind the boat on it, and it's not in this budget, but this is a balanced budget, and I commend our staff for that. But that's kind of where I'm at.
Let me clarify my word commitment, since it was so vague to you. The process, going through the process, I don't know what it's going to be. I can't tell you what I'm going to vote on something that I don't know the numbers on, but I'm committed to go through the process of getting there to make a decision.
Absolutely. Now that we agree on, that we do agree
Well,
on.
tell me I'm not clear, and then I'll clear it up next time.
You were this time. You were not clear the first time.
Other comments?
Wait a minute.
Go ahead, Jim.
Let me just make sure. Oh, we are clear now, aren't we, Mr. Tucker?
As muddy water.
Thank you.
David, go ahead, bud.
Mr. Tucker, I took your comments to mean that when I say commitment, I can look at this budget that's presented here, and you start talking about adjustments in pay scales, which I believe is very necessary, by the way. I think what you mean is, by looking at this budget, we're all seven is going to have make a commitment, because we're going to all pony up, because I don't see where this money is in a very lean budget. So that's how I interpreted your words, was if we're going to go down this road, we better be serious, because it's going to cause all of us to make some really I won't say hard decisions, but it's make different decisions.
It'll be tough.
In versus how we've done before, because the administrators given us a very lean budget, much to everyone's popular belief. A county budget doesn't have a whole lot of fat in it. This is very lean. It's full of essential services that many of our citizens, all of our citizens, depend on. So that's how I took your comment, to mean that if we go down this road, and I'm ready to go down the road because I think it's necessary. And I'm with Russell. I don't need to do a study. I'll do a study right now. Yes, it needs to be done. It doesn't take a rocket scientist to realize that someone making $23,000 a year needs a change. So that's how I took your words, and that's what I'm telling us is if we go down this road, we're not going to like the results of what's going to be told to us because we all know what it's going to say.
What is it going to say?
It's going to say that you've got to raise the salary scales for your employees. That's what it's going to say. And then the next question is going to ask, well, where do we find this money? So I think we're all kind of dancing around it, but that's where it's going to be. We're going to have to find revenue.
If I may close it so
Yeah.
he can move forward and we can finish. I think we freed up $1.6 million in revenue. We have a proposal to free up $1.6 million in revenue.
Yes, sir.
By paying off debt.
Yes, sir.
Once we restructure, we'll have $1.6 million, and it'll be up to us to determine where that goes. So if we were going to be at $400,000 worth of increases at 2%, we can probably restructure something.
Absolutely.
And it wouldn't, I don't think it would be that difficult.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, that's
We
what I
can
mean.
figure it
I'm with you. It's doable. We just we got to make
So I
different
think
decisions.
that's where the money's at.
Yep.
Or a piece of that money. And I think a piece of that money needs to go to fire and EMS and maybe the sheriff's office.
Mm-hmm.
We need to determine where that goes and is best used. And there's no millage increase, which is the beautiful
Ben,
thing
you got
about
it?
it.
Yep.
If I may, Mr. Carpenter, part of that 1.6 could be used for that.
Yes, sir.
And I want to tell you something, Mr. Brazel, outstanding work. Thank you.
Ben, any comments?
Well, sure, since you ask. Since I've been on council, I've tried to fairly advocate the position that I bring from the private sector that I think not all employees are created equal. And when you have 400 folks, the administrator or those in his staff can't possibly know the value that each employee adds. Department heads have a pretty fair opportunity to determine that value. So in the past, I've advocated input from department heads on which employees actually deserve a raise or need a raise. Some people might be given more than 2% value add per year. Some people might be given less. So I would bring a private sector approach to it, but the response I've received in the past, Mr. Chairman, is, well, that's just not possible in government because of structures and how you have certain retirement fringe benefits. But it's really all I've known my whole life as an entrepreneur and a small business owner. To the extent you're looking at equity, I think the 3-2-1 model works better. I think there's greater inequity towards the bottom of the pay scale, and it should probably be addressed first because it's the greatest inequity. With that said, I haven't heard this phrase yet, but I think some of the discussions we're having are budget busters, where we just could not afford to do some of the things we've been talking about. For example, just like we couldn't afford to pay cash for the sewer expansion we want to do necessarily, we'd have to finance it in some way. We need to do it. We have to do it. We got to figure out a way to finance it. It'd bust the budget otherwise, and therefore we just can't. I don't think we could address the inequity or where the pay scale needs to go fully at this time, but we can take steps, and it might be over a number of years. So first preference, Mr. Chairman, would be a little bit more of a private sector approach to compensation based on value added. And in lieu of that, a graduated scale 3-2-1 or something like that at certain breaks and income levels makes more sense to me.
Yeah, I'll tell you what, well, go ahead, Dave. I want to close it out and see if we can get an approach to get
Sure.
it done.
Just
Thank
real
you,
quick,
Ben. Thank you, Ben.
Oh.
Go ahead, please.
I'm understanding though what we have is a ceiling and floor and ceiling problem. So you talk about a raise. A raise is something when you have a correct ceiling, a correct floor, and a correct ceiling. A raise is a raise within what we have it as established as, what the floor and what the ceiling is. But what I'm hearing is we have to raise the floor. We have to raise what the rock bottom is, and that's what I'm hearing. That's what I've heard from the department heads in this budget discussion is. Yeah, they're talking, I know it's always a raise, but I think at the very core, the very principle, they're saying our floor is inadequate. So they're not just talking about just a raise for the sake of giving a raise to somebody for doing a good or a bad job. I think they're saying fundamentally, our floor and ceiling is probably 15 years behind. And so I think that's why this is a more robust and comprehensive discussion that we need to look at, other than just how we give a raise.
Well, okay.
Those are my thoughts anyway.
Well, we're also faced with a deluge of federal funding that's raising artificially, as Russ and I have talked about, the pay going in the private sector, so we've got to compete with the private sector as well, and not only just do what's right by our employees, as we've already voted on in our objectives. Vic, what's the best way to come after this thing, bud?
Well, obviously, what I can do is I can get staff together, and we can, as Mr. Brazel suggested, look at some basic suggestions. I mean, some of it is common sense. Some of it is just not a matter of knowing what the value of a clerk is compared to a clerk 3. So we can do some basic preliminary work that would maybe come back and give council an idea of what we would look at to raise, the starting salary for an initial to $25,000 a year for a starting employee in a clerk's position.
Mm-hmm.
And then how that would kind of morph across the system, because as you raise those people, then you got to raise other people up as well, and so on and so forth. So try to give an idea of what that might look like.
Right.
That's something we can probably work on in the next couple of weeks.
Well, yes, what I'm hearing is a work session on personnel. Is that what you're saying?
We can definitely do that. It may be, again, I don't know how long it would take us, so I don't know that it would take us a month by any stretch to come up with something like that.
Yeah.
So, a work session maybe in 2 weeks is something we could shoot
Okay.
for, or we could provide it to council, and then council could look at it, and then just kind of.
What I'm trying to do is lay this out in terms of our work plan. We have a work session next week.
Yes, sir.
And that's on EMS and fire and so on.
Yes, sir.
And then on the same day, we have a second reading.
No, that's
I
following
mean,
week.
excuse me, the following week, we have a second reading on the same day. We could do a work session in the morning.
Correct.
And then amend the budget as necessary based on Tuesday, the 25th. We're in here in the morning. I'm asking you guys to give up more of your personal and business time. And then in the afternoon, at the council meeting, we do the second reading. Is that sequence work okay?
Fine by me.
And then those that want to contribute would do it through Vic, and you would be the appointed agency to do that?
Yes, sir.
Is that all right with everybody?
Yeah, that's great with me, if I may, Mr. Chairman. Let me ask you this, would it be of any help to you if the chairman appointed a 3-person committee to work with you on this study alone from county council? Because to help you get it done within a short period of time and on a timely fashion to get back to county council?
I don't know that I would need council members necessarily to work on it, though I appreciate Mr. Brazel and y'all's willingness to do so, and I'll take you up on it. I don't know that I need that.
I didn't say I was willing to work on it. I just said I'm willing to volunteer them to work on it.
But it certainly wouldn't hurt to maybe just have 3 council members who would kind of discuss it with me, as we come up with numbers and whatever. So I don't see a problem with that at all. I think that could be of value to me in helping kind of formulate maybe where I'm looking at and getting their input. It's not obviously a decision of the council, but 3 members can certainly give me some good sense for if
Well,
I'm
let me
going the
just
right
tell
way.
Jimmy, I think everybody up here has an opinion. I'm just not willing to appoint a task force because sometimes those come along with overhead and staff support and so on and so forth. I think we can keep our informal way of working and then bring that in on a new working session at 10 o'clock on the 25th, right here. Yeah, go ahead.
Let me respond to your comments. I am in no way saying I was in favor of that. I was just thinking out loud, throwing suggestions out there,
Good.
as I always do so well. Thank you.
Thanks,
You can
Jimmy.
just give me
You're
something to
welcome.
look at ahead of time.
Yeah.
I'll go through it. Thank you.
Yeah, I think we all will. But anyway, you can see the passion on taking care of our employees. And Sandra, that's just more work for you, but that's what we do. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Okay, Vic, back. I'm sorry I opened up that discussion, but I'm glad I did.
Valuable discussion.
All right, and it's consistent with the objectives that we voted on back in January and February. Thank you. Go ahead.
Page 48, detention center. Again, they stay flat as far as personnel and expenses, where their costs go up. If you look under toward the bottom, contracted services, food, and then professional services, medical. So we're spending about $600,000 a year at the jail for food and medical care.
And the medical bill is astonishing. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, members of council, when I ran the jail, I had 40 slips in the shower in 1 month of grown folks slipping in the shower. So I know what Director Tyrell's dealing with sometimes, you know, it's almost impossible. But thank you. And thank you for the job you do, Jail Director.
I would also tell you that the jail director has been contributing to our clean community by hundreds of bags collected. Thank you. Everybody asks, why can't we have a cleaner community? Well, the detention center has been helping with that. And thank you, Cato. Yes, sir. Back to you.
Moving on to outside agencies. Again, as you see, the change in there is a solicitor. With his request, he goes from 400 to 468. And filling that position he requested from the council back in January when he addressed you.
So is he aware of this and he's happy with it?
That's what he asked for.
That's right. That's what he asked for.
So that's one additional,
He said it'd be one additional person. Yes, sir.
Yeah.
That's what he would use it for, dedicated to Kershaw County.
Mr. Carpenter, I have a question. So, like Humane Society, as an outside agency, we have a responsibility to provide for some of the services that they provide, except we contract with them as an outside agency. Why, this is just a kind of a question out of curiosity, why do we have the Alpha Center under a different section when we have to provide some of the services they provide, but we contract with them?
The services that well, sometimes the 601 have to under the other, but in the case of these, we are required by law to provide services for the Humane Society, the Public Defender, and Solicitor. So we have to do those. We contract with the Humane Society. Public Defender and Solicitor is not a contract. We just have to pay their expenses. The Alpha Center, our relationship with them is we don't have any direct contract as an entity with them that we're mandated. Now, money is collected on their behalf by the county and submitted to them that they use towards their operating costs. That doesn't show up in our budget. It's kind of a pass-through that we collect and then we pass it on to them. But with the Alpha Center, we use them for some things like employee screenings, things like that, where we pay them for those services in it. But we don't have any direct obligations where we have to use them for certain things like the Humane Society we do.
Okay.
So we just choose to put it that way.
Okay, I was just wondering if there's a reason we had it categorized.
There's not. We just try to segregate out, so we show those organizations that we choose to use versus organizations that we have to use.
Okay, carry on. Thank you.
Okay.
Mister, if I may, I slid my chair back because anytime you have that discussion, I'm not in that discussion. So that's why I went to the back of the room.
Are you saying all I have to do is say Alpha Center?
Yeah,
Nice, now we're
Hey, that's a pretty strong precedent right there. I'm starting sneezing. Alpha Center.
all right. Back to you, Vic.
Okay. Special services. Again, we continue to be inundated with issues with puppy mills and a variety of other things that the sheriff can tell you. So that's it's a fairly flat budget in that respect. But we have more animal control officers than most any other county our size in the state because of just the reality of the animals in this county. But they're fairly flat from last year to this year.
Okay.
Vic,
Yeah, I'm sorry. Yes, sir.
does this, in this budget, does this address, I know for a while we had a full-time litter officer. I know that's changed, and I know that was a grant. I mean, does this budget address having to, because we need someone out there writing litter tickets?
There is a grant-funded position that we are working with the sheriff to try to find someone for. It's a part-time job. The requirements to be a litter officer are different than to be an animal control officer. In the past, we had a former deputy who was qualified to do it. Our current animal control officers don't have the background that leads them to be a litter control officer because you have to be making stops, vehicle stops.
Correct.
And there's different law that covers litter versus animals. So it takes a different person. So finding a part-time person who's qualified and competent is not as easy, but we are working with the sheriff still trying to fill, because there is a grant for that position. As soon as we can fill it, we will.
And can you expand, I'd like to get from you and the sheriff after this, a view on where that officer could best be positioned.
Sure.
Because it does have some record implications, and I'm getting a lot of suggestions from our wonderful Clean Community Committee about going full-time instead of just part-time. And then where that person should best be, especially when they do investigation and matters of that nature, okay?
I'll be glad to get with you. Yes, sir.
Okay.
Moving on, page 51, Veterans Affairs. Again, everybody knows Ms. Ray, I think. What a wonderful job she does, and her budget is always flat. She requests very little, and she does a great job with it. And so then we move on to registration and elections. Again, we coming up this year, every year, you're either going to have a set of primaries, you're going to have a set of elections. So coming up this coming year, we'll have a set of primaries that we have to manage and run for. So you see there, obviously part-time is, all their poll watchers and poll workers that they have to have is the biggest part of their budget. Their expenses go up in contract and maintenance. The state put new voting equipment on us. It requires a lot more money to maintain now. So
Go figure.
big price increase there for them as well. Our library. Again, the library is governed by state law, so there are requirements that go towards the library as far as funding. We're required to put a certain percent budget into a library operation. We can't cut that percent by state law, but they're, again, very good about their requests. They're essentially flat again. They have brought in a grant-funded position that is working with a number of the communities that use the library, maybe communities at risk, either homeless or what have you. So they've got a grant-funded position now working with those individuals that go through the library as well, trying to get them services that they need. So they're doing a really good job with that. They'll be putting a new bookmobile on the road as well this year that they also received a grant. So
The
they're doing
bookmobile was paid for last year? I mean,
Yeah.
this current year, right?
Yes.
So we've already taken care of that?
Yes.
All right, thank you.
So, Mr. Carpenter,
Yes, sir.
so when I'm looking at here, that state aid is only minuscule compared, because it was 141, I think, and the budget's 1.1. So most of that's out of the general fund.
Correct. Yes, sir. Yeah, the county pays the bulk of their expenses, but the county's required to pay the bulk of their expenses.
I understand.
So, and I remember some time ago, there was, we were looking at the very beginning of the fire plan, and I recall people in an audience were saying, well, just defund the library to fund fire. And the legal answer is we can't. It's not a target for anything, because by law, we have to maintain a certain percentage of our budget.
But they
In the library.
really meant, we're gonna let everything burn down, and,
Well, I wasn't trying to say that, just saying that.
and then we'll all be
that-
dummies.
That it's not a
Yeah,
target.
can't read. Yeah.
Moving on to recreation. Of course, last year, as you know, everything was canceled. So their programs, so they spent time revising programs, coming up with new programs. They've added from kickball and looking at lacrosse and other programs. that
I'm
they've
signed up for the
added.
kickball team, by the way. So
Have
I'm
we added
looking forward to that.
Are we
Lacrosse?
at a lacrosse?
They're looking at it.
You play lacrosse?
Oh, right.
Yes, sir.
One of my sons does.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
they're looking at it. They haven't added it yet, but they're looking at new programs we can
How
get
about
into.
Quidditch?
We talked about it, actually, as one as well. So we've added the splash pad, as well as council knows. That was open last year briefly, but it will be open full-time this year. The county will maintain it. So there's been some increased expenses in the pool and the athletics and the programs. Again, we will be recommending some modest fee increases to go with some of those programs as well, as council wanted us to look at doing. So their budget shows some growth in some of those areas that they have to get equipment, and now they have to run and maintain a pool and a splash pad as well. Brother Barry, risk management. Again, his budgets are flat.
Vic, I have a quick question
Yes,
on
sir.
recreation.
Yes, sir.
I think we had some type of balance from the state funds that came in for the Elgin Community Park. And I was just wondering what the balance was and if those funds were used in anything you proposed here.
Not in anything operational, no, sir.
Do you have a rough idea of what we have on the balance, or do we end up spending most of it?
We spent most of the state money. Sandra, do you recall how much is left from the county funds? About 63,000.
remaining for use for capital or
Yes, sir.
something? Okay.
Yes, it was in capital.
Capital
account.
project. All
Yes,
right.
sir.
Thank you.
And where, on the Armory project, where are they on that?
We have finished with the exterior work. We had to repoint the building. That was,
All right.
was the first thing. because-
Looks good, you can tell a difference.
Yeah, it looks really good. Then, there's some funds left with that, but the next stage is that we have to relocate the, maintenance shop that's behind it. So we've currently got a grant request in through the state budget, Senator Gustafson had put in for the next phase, which would allow us to acquire a new place to move the maintenance shop to, and then tear that down, and then all the building area behind it can become grass and parking. That we would have some money plus the leftover money received in phase one. So we'd get the exterior of the building completely done. Then future phases would be the interior of the building. So we look to go ahead and get rid of all that mess behind it and landscape it.
Council members, I'd also mention, since we talked about the splash pad, after, I guess we look at it this year and it's open full-time, if it actually ends up generating a positive revenue flow, there are members of the community who have expressed an interest in funding a splash pad in the West Watery area.
Great.
At the West Watery Sports Complex.
Why not?
And that's them funding it. So if it ends up being a positive in Camden, maybe we can get one in West Watery as well.
Great idea.
Of course, the county would have to maintain it and own it afterwards, but that'd be a big help.
Terrific.
Risk management, again, flat budget. Barry just quietly sits there and does a great job for us. Training and development, that's our new department focusing on our employees' training and skills for retention. So that's an addition this year. So that's the Enhance You, the KC Works, and the KC Solution, the various programs we're working with our employees. DSS, the biggest part of their expenses are the rent we pay, the $144,000 a year to the United Way for the space they use. We're also required to contribute towards their operations, which is the $12,000. The health department is similar, but we don't have to pay rent since we own their building, so we contribute toward theirs operations. Indigent care, again, the state tells us what we have to pay. This is page 57, sorry. So we pay that towards indigent care. Our legislative delegation, with a change to the delegation, they went to a full-time staff. So this reflects an increase from part-time to full-time for their staff over there. And then just an incidental amount for fleet maintenance for just some of the paperwork for the county and some of the costs the county incurs for the overall contract we manage. So the general fund budget, $28,695,942.
One question.
Yes, sir.
Under DSS, we spend $144,000 a year in rent.
Yes, sir.
That's $12,000 a month.
Yes, sir.
Is that what we want to be doing with that much money?
The county has a 10-year lease that we signed with it. The first year lease was signed back in 2005, maybe, somewhere in that time frame, and it was a 10-year lease, and the county committed to the United Way that we would be the main tenant of the renovation of the building that they're in. When the lease was time to expire, back in 2013, I think, 2014, the county opted again to renew the lease for another 10 years, up to about 2024. Next year, I'll probably be bringing to council if it is your desire to continue that or to look a different direction, as we would probably need about 2 years head start if we're not going to go that direction of where we would go and how we'd go.
Who owns the building again?
The United Way.
Okay.
It's the whole second floor of the United Way building is used by
It's a long
DSS.
discussion, believe me.
Okay. Yeah, it's
Yeah,
just,
buddy.
it's a lot of money. You could probably build for less than that.
Yeah, you picked up on that point.
And also, I noticed we increased the, I won't call it donation amount, but the contribution amount by 100%.
Yes,
It went from 15 to 30,
Yes, sir.
the United Way.
Yes, that's for their mobile food pantry.
Mr. Chairman, I had a question on legislative delegation,
Yeah.
and then just a couple others, if I could.
Sure.
So I think tax dollars should always have some type of oversight, and traditionally, I think the delegation has provided that. But with recent leadership changes, I'm wondering who has oversight over those dollars that we pay. Is it you now, or have they reformed something at the delegation recently that would lead to oversight over taxpayer dollars?
The oversight is the delegation itself. The county administrator has no oversight over the position. The county is just required to pay whatever the delegation reasonably asks us to pay. And that's the legal term they use, is reasonably in the law. So whatever they reasonably request, the county must pay. So they requested to go from part-time to full-time, and this is how that budget worked out forward.
Okay. The other two questions I had were, I may have glossed over it, but the Clean Community Commission budget, I forget if it's 10 or 15,000 right now, but what is that level? Clean Community Commission is like 10 or 15,000 dollars that we have annually that they get to use for community.
Actually, not that much. They had,
It's like 7,000.
they requested,
What page are you on?
page 24. They requested 3, so that's what we funded them for, was 3. And that's just for the basic, because they also have grant money they use, but that's just for supplies and whatever.
Oh, no, I just glossed it, sorry.
Yes, sir.
I would like to see that increased. Just talking to my council members at some point, I think we need to figure out how to make that happen. Just monitoring other commissions, and particularly this one, you've got a set of motivated volunteers. I feel like we get good ROI on these dollars. They've actually beautified the community in many significant ways. And one of the chief complaints I hear in the county from people that live around here is litter on the roads and just a general, I won't say it's a lack of pride, but maybe a lack of responsibility in keeping the area clean. So I think they've done a good job. I'd like to see their budget increase some.
I don't disagree with that. That's pretty small.
Could I,
Me neither.
I'd like to say something in line with, since we're talking about that. I know that, I want to commend Steve Zobel. He's gone around and put flyers out all over our neighborhood, and we're going to have a litter pickup at this coming weekend at 8 o'clock. Everybody's meeting at 514 Lashcott Road. That's my home in the front yard, and we're going to head out from there. But Jill Wolf and all members of the commission have been so helpful in making sure that we're provided with the adequate tools that we need to go ahead and get that done. So I just wanted to mention that to everybody.
Yeah, there's 200 people have volunteered, Jimmy, this weekend.
I understand that.
That's really great. Yeah. On that context, let me just raise it again since Ben has brought it back up and Dave Snodgrass has mentioned it. That committee is very much in favor of a full-time and not a part-time. So that's going to have to be, the sense of this body needs to be conveyed. And then secondly, we need to understand what that role is. And thirdly, for whom that person should best work. Should it be with Vic or with the sheriff? So what do you guys think?
I can tell you what I think I know, and the sheriff can certainly speak up. If there's a Class 1 officer, the sheriff is the one who will have to hire, and he'll overall be responsible for whatever actions he takes. Am I correct on that, Sheriff? In this county, the sheriff is the only one.
Class 1, yes, sir.
Yeah. So if that's what you want,
I don't believe a litter officer has to be Class 1, but that's a desired.
That sure is, Jimmy. It sure is. But at that point, let's make sure we convey, Ben, thanks for bringing it up, and Dave, what we want him to do along with the sheriff and make sure we have that right, okay? Because right now, Ben, to your point, we were pursuing in this budget a grant position and part-time, okay?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The last question I had was just wondering what the balance is for the ATAX account, if we roughly know.
50, the ATAX committee,
No, just the account, the ATAX.
Sarah,
Fund.
Sandra?
I know it wouldn't be included here, but as we move forward, I want to be thinking about it.
Yeah, well, no, the ATAX fund balance.
If you don't have it now, just shoot me an email or something, let me know what it is.
Yeah, I'd like to see it myself. Thanks, good, Ben. Other comments?
One
Yeah.
more just budget-related question. Is there anywhere in here where we're leasing property or through economic development? Do we hold any leases with individuals for properties?
Nothing that we pay through economic development. We have, for example, the land that's in Steeplechase Industrial Park that's owned by Mulberry, we don't have a lease on any of that. We just have an agreement, a purchase agreement that we could buy it at a set amount. Same thing on the land, the Condor Mega Site. We don't have any agreement. We just have a purchase agreement, not a lease agreement. So we don't have any lease agreements on any property in economic development or really the county.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Yes, sir.
Okay, we are through the general fund. We are certainly willing to go into capital fund today to buy you some time. We are scheduled to go through noon and maybe after that. How do you guys feel? You guys want to charge on with capital fund?
I got all day.
All right, all right,
I'll probably
I'll be dismissing.
I'll step
here in
out
20
around
minutes.
all right.
I got a 12:15.
What do you think, Vic?
I believe I can do most in 20 minutes.
I do too. Let's go.
Kind of cut dry. Then if you go straight to your capital fund handout.
It's right beneath the one you
And as a
got.
reminder, the capital fund is set up, first of all, we have some dedicated millage that puts money into the capital fund. Thank you, I'm sorry.
Oh, you don't have it?
No,
Okay.
I said we don't have that.
I thought you did.
Thank you, sir.
That's why we were talking so much. We thought we were almost done.
All right, I had it. Don't know
I
why.
was trying to stretch it to 12.
No, let's get out early. How about that?
Yeah, what an idea.
I think Russell could be a preacher, couldn't he?
Right.
I think Russell could be a preacher. He's over there
Stretch it to
stretching it
12.
out because he got a little time.
So we start with, again, our general income every year from a millage that's assigned. So you see current property, fee in lieu, et cetera, local option sales tax. It gets a share of all that. Then you see toward the bottom, there, under the revenue, there's two line items. One is transfer from capital reserves and one is from the general fund. The transfer from capital reserves is carrying forward money for projects that have already been authorized but have not been completed. So the $916,000 is bringing forward money for projects that are already underway. And then the transfer from the general fund is that 1.2 million I mentioned at the beginning of the general fund, bringing in the net from last year. So the total money in the fund is $4 million. Now, what we use that for is, first of all, our capital lease payments. Those are our heavy equipment that are leased. So that $86,000 for capital lease. Then you see our enterprise leases. Every year we lease vehicles. The sheriff's office receives the bulk of them, but the occasional pickup trucks or sedans that other department gets are in there as well. You see us showing an enterprise lease for 2021 of $110,000. One reason why that's a little bigger is because part of the 2020 lease had to roll over because vehicles were not available with chips and things like that. So we've had to roll some of that over to this year, and therefore reflects accordingly in there. You see some ongoing projects with the rec department. Those are some of the funds that we discussed. For example, the $63,000 would be in there. Voter registration to try to finish up that parking lot. You see there, we're putting money in it, as we'll get into, but you see money for the KC West concession stand. That was a big project that was requested by Parks and Rec, is to do that. And then capital equipment and projects that we'll start going into on the next page.
Vic,
Yes,
how
sir.
long is our lease there? 5 years?
4 years.
4 years, so
Oh, yeah.
this 2017 ought to be rolling off. This is the last payment on this one?
Yes.
Okay, just wanted to make sure.
Yes, sir. So as you flip the page, what you've got here is what was requested and then what we've recommend funding. And it's broken into three areas: cash, which is just flat out cash; lease, which would be like a capital lease; and then the enterprise, which is our vehicles. So IT has requested several items. What we're recommending is their priority number one. Their actually priority number two is funded under GIS. Their priority number three, and then priority number 5. So that's what we're recommending for IT. Building maintenance, they need to redo some bathrooms in the health department, so there's money there for that, as well as money for HVAC units at the government center and at the jail. And then some work at the detention center, the break room. Public Works, a dump truck. On the next page, GIS, I just mentioned. Their priority for to replace and upgrade their S3 software. For the sheriff, he's requested 10 vehicles. We recommend 10 vehicles, and 5 Tahoes. We recommend 5 Tahoes. So all the vehicles the sheriff has recommended, we're recommending funding. He's requested, we're recommending funding. The detention center's requested upgrade their live scan. And then recreation. We're recommending building the new concession stands at the ball fields at Casey West and landscaping Casey West so we can start closing out Casey West as a project. So that adds up to,
Real quick, can I
Yes.
just intervene, and I won't be long?
No.
I got a video yesterday of people coming in and out of the ball fields over in Elgin, that's KC West. Really congested traffic and no handicap parking. Is that something that we can address?
handicap we should be able to address for sure, yes, sir.
Okay.
They'll normally have, during games, in the past, they've had off-duty deputies or high patrolmen to try to control traffic in and out. The highway department won't let us put a light up there. We've tried for a couple of years, we'll keep trying, but they say it doesn't qualify for a stoplight. So we have to have actual people out there controlling traffic on busy days.
Maybe we can get DOT to look at a turning lane or something.
It's a county road, so they'll do whatever we want to put into, so yes, sir, if we want to. The problem is if you're familiar, the ditches are very tight and very deep right there by that road.
Right.
And the right-of-way is very limited. We paved that, it was a dirt road, you may remember, for a long time. And we just paved it a couple of years ago. We kind of had to struggle for right-of-way just to pave it because we didn't have as much right-of-way as we need. So it doesn't have a lot of right-of-way, certainly not on the side towards the houses in the mini-mart. But yes, sir. We can always
I'm
try.
just passing along something that was sent to me yesterday afternoon, and it was just, really busy.
It can be
Yeah, I
a
got
mess.
it 2 weeks ago, so I went out myself last weekend, and we were victims of our own success at KC West.
No, that's-
Yeah, Shane, well done. Yeah.
Yes.
Correct. Yeah, that's right.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, yep. I hadn't been out there in years. I was just. Sure. I'll get with you afterwards and I'll give you the gentleman's name and maybe y'all can just hook up.
Well, Shane, the
Thank you very much for that.
the ones at the park, where the playground is, they were up as of Saturday because I had my two grandbabies out there playing in it. So that's the one tore them down the last couple of days.
Okay.
The simple things really matter, Shane, and clean restrooms matter, and you've done a great job, your staff, on that. Just want to tell you thank you.
I appreciate that. Yeah, those are definitely difficult.
So
Absolutely.
I know that's a challenge.
So moving into then our special funds for capital. Again, the inmate canteen, that's by law is restricted how you spend money in the canteen account. It has to benefit the inmates. So they're going to be purchasing that equipment out of the canteen from the funds they have on reserve. 911, again, they're looking to purchase some more consoles and some more software. Again, as you see over to the right side, 80% of that is from reserves. The county would pay 20%, and the same thing on the software.
Those are consoles that can rise so they can stand. Yeah, I knew they talked about one though.
Okay,
So,
yeah.
Yep. Cool.
I know she was there a second ago. Again, fire services, the match for the grant for the air packs. Obviously, we hope to get that as the cost of those air packs will be $1 million. So we've got in there the grant match for that. Solid waste, buying 2 new roll-off trucks. As y'all recall, we added trucks several years ago. It's time to start replacing trucks and adding them so we can move the most worn into reserve positions for it. Then at the airport, looking to get a scissor lift. We can actually use that around the county, but the airport is where we have the highest problem with roofs being 30 feet off the ground and lights, so it would be out at the airport. Gentlemen, those are the capital requests and what we're recommending funding for capital in the county.
Fellas, what do you think? That's a tight budget. Any closing comments? And we'll be on time. I will say on the pay rise, I don't believe it was the intent up here on anybody's part to raise pay for this body. It's for everybody else.
Correct. Absolutely correct.
All right, and then the next session, if you need to change topics and venues, we now have another working session next week and the week after. So let us know how you want to proceed, okay?
Absolutely. And tonight will be first reading title only, so even though you have the budget, again, first reading title only starts the process. That gives you an opportunity to work with me as a council to change anything. So by second reading, we can then start putting numbers, and that may reflect, as I said at the beginning, there may be some changes. There normally are from first reading to second reading.
Yeah.
So,
Great, and we look forward to Mr. Jones's presentation tonight. Any others? Well, thanks, everybody, and let's go home.